This photo is of the Cincinnati crawler. It was taken by a family who caught him in their home in 1974, but he escaped shortly afterwards. So in 1974, the Johnson family in Cincinnati noticed a couple weird things happening in their home. The 14-year-old daughter, Claire, would complain about seeing glowing eyes outside of her window at night. And then one night, the youngest son, Timmy, was laying in bed in the dark when he felt the family dog jump up onto his bed. But when he went to go pet it, it was not the dog. It was the crawler, who police still believe was responsible for the disappearance of 4 other boys in the area. Some believe that he was an escaped convict, while others actually believe that he was the victim of human experiments happening in the area that may have been conducted by the family's dad. Claire snapped this photo of him before he escaped, but he was never found since.
We're always told to drink a lot of water throughout the day, but have you ever wondered what happens when you drink too much water? Well, 35-year-old Ashley Summers drank 64 ounces of water in a span of 20 minutes and passed away from water toxicity. Ashley, her husband, and 2 daughters were at Lake Freeman in Indiana when she began feeling dehydrated. So she drank 4 bottles of water because for some reason she wasn't able to quench her thirst. Ashley complained about having a horrible headache and she began to feel lightheaded. When she got home with her family, she passed out in the garage and she was taken to the hospital where the doctor said she had brain swelling. Ashley never woke up and she was pronounced dead from water toxicity. A toxicologist said that this is more likely to happen to someone who's extremely dehydrated, which will cause them to drink too much water and not enough sodium or electrolytes. So remember, bring more than just water on really hot days, especially if you're under the sun for a long period of time.
Gone for 2 days, found wearing clothes that weren't mine. My name is Ricker Webb. And at just 3 years old, the forest of Montana in my small town in the United States changed me forever. It was a sunny day in June, and I was carelessly playing with the dogs in the garden. In a moment of distraction, I vanished, swallowed by the vast and unforgiving forest. Despite the desperate efforts of my parents, the police, search dogs, and even helicopters, I was nowhere to be found. In this wild region, every passing minute brought me closer to the clutches of bears, cougars, and other unimaginable dangers. Then, against all odds, after 2 days of anguish, I was found in a secluded cabin, miles away from home. But something was off. I was unrecognizable, wearing clothes my parents had never seen before. Their relief quickly turned to confusion, then to terror. Was it really me, their little Ricker, or had something else taken my place? And that's when the DNA test revealed the unthinkable. What do you think happened to me in that mysterious forest? Share your theories in the comments and follow me for more gripping stories.
Police arrived to this murder scene to find a 5-year-old waving a loaded weapon. Adam Simji and his girlfriend Michaela Paulus really enjoyed hiking. In August 2022, the couple had embarked on a road trip through Alabama. They wanted to make the most of the time that they had together prior to starting classes at Florida Uni. As they were driving through the Talladega National Forest, they came across a woman at the side of the road. She seemed to be after their help. The woman in question was 21-year-old Yasmin Hyder. She had apparently broken down not far away and asked the pair to help her. They followed her to the car and then out of the blue she pulled a gun out. She told them to empty their pockets and follow her into the woods. Adam actually told her that all of their valuables were in the van and she was welcome to take them. He then also pulled his gun out and the pair opened fire. Yasmin shot him in the abdomen and killed him. Yasmin was also shot 4 times. Michaela grabbed her phone and called emergency services. She also attempted CPR on her boyfriend. She was desperately trying to stop the blood flow coming from the wound. Shockingly, when police turned up to the crime scene, they found a 5-year-old boy with a loaded weapon. The child was Yasmin's son. Luckily, the child put the weapon down and Yasmin and an accomplice, Crystal Pinkins, were arrested. The child was obviously taken away by authorities. Yasmin received 35 years in prison and Crystal is yet to have her trial.
Do you remember Posh Mama, the woman who is always here on TikTok talking about her teeth and remedies for problems in your life? Well, she killed someone. This is a true story. So Posh Mama was a TikToker who was always talking about oil pulling and teeth health and all this stuff. And for a while, she was actually giving advice to millions of people. I remember seeing her videos pop up on my For You page. But at one point, a bunch of different doctors and people who had some sort of knowledge in the field came on TikTok and started exposing her for basically being a fraud and giving bad advice to people. And then people started digging into her past and found out that only a few years ago, she had murdered her boyfriend with a car in Pennsylvania. So her real name is Esther Brubaker, and this is a kind of disturbing tale. So this is Esther's boyfriend who she killed. His name is Jeremy Anderson, and he actually went viral a few years ago for being in a video where he was claiming he was being brutalized by the police. But in 2013, when Esther and Jeremy were driving home in the same car, they began to argue about something, and Esther got really worked up. When they reached the couple's home, Jeremy hopped out of the car, and Esther floored it and ran Jeremy over, killing him. So Esther fled the scene, and she was eventually arrested by cops. She was with an ex-boyfriend of hers drinking at a bar. When she was arrested, she was hammered, drunk, and obviously it was time for her to face the consequences of what she had just done. So she ended up serving a few years in prison, but then she was released, and that's when Esther started her TikTok account, Posh Mama. Now, Esther actually bullied family members of Jeremy's when they started speaking out against her and trying to remind people that she had murdered somebody in her past and that they probably shouldn't be taking advice from her. And Esther got really mad. Now, eventually her account was deleted. I don't know if she deleted it herself or if it was taken off of TikTok. But this is a shocking story. I definitely would never have imagined that the woman who was giving me advice about my teeth was a convicted murderer.
This teen confessed to murder while being secretly filmed by one of his friends. Sarah Stern was just 19 years old when she went missing. Her car was found on a bridge in New Jersey with the ignition still running, and police suspected she'd committed suicide by jumping into the river below. However, the police were tipped off by someone that knew Sarah and pointed in the direction of Liam McAtanzi. Liam had told his friend Anthony Curry that he'd stolen money from Sarah that she'd recently inherited from her late mother, and then he'd killed her, and Anthony went straight to the police. However, to get a conviction, they needed a confession that would stand up in court. He fully cooperated with police and agreed to take part in a sting operation that would see Liam sent down for life.
What did you finish? No, you didn't hear about it? It was all over the news. Right, but I didn't know if you, went through. Yeah. And the worst part is, we threw her off the bridge, and the body never showed up. It's probably frozen. It's probably all the way out in the ocean. She took some money out, not all of her money. We're counting it out, and then she goes to walk out the front door. I choke her out, drag her. My biggest problem was the dog, and her dog laid there and watched as I killed her.
Liam had got Sarah to withdraw around $8,000. They'd then gone back to Sarah's house, where he strangled her for around 30 minutes. He then left her body and came back later that night with his friend Preston. They drove Sarah's car to a bridge and threw her over the side. Tragically, Sarah's body has never been found, and without that taped confession, her death would have likely been ruled a suicide. Preston Taylor pleaded guilty to his charges, and as part of a plea deal to testify against Liam, he was given an 18-year sentence. Liam McAtanzi was found guilty of multiple charges, including first-degree murder, felony murder and robbery, and he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole in 2019.
This is honestly a parent's worst nightmare.
How I discovered my son was sexually assaulted at Little People Greater Life of Greater Life Church, Part 1. So I went to go pick up my son from daycare, and when the teacher brought him to me, I kept saying, "Hello, hi, how are you?" And he kind of was just very mellow and was just like, "Hi," I picked him up. And
you really need to go watch the entire clip, but after watching all her videos, I'm so upset at how they're handling this. I've been following this case for quite some time, and this mother has been trying to get some justice for her 3-year-old son Noah, who was AR'd in his daycare, and no one wants to take accountability. Her son was acting very unusual and showed signs of pain in certain areas of his body, so that's when she decided to take him to the hospital. The mother went to the hospital to run some tests, and it was confirmed by the specialist that her son Noah was indeed SA'd. But the detective claims that she's lying despite all the forensic reports that she has from the hospital. They dismissed her case and said that her son was just constipated. These are the 3 men from the church that did this to Noah, and who knows how many other victims there are. I haven't seen this case anywhere in the news, and it really upsets me, so I hope you guys can share this and just bring more attention to it, because who knows how many other children are going through this by the hands of these evil people. These are some other photos of the predators and their Facebooks, and people have been trying to leave reviews on this church daycare facility, but these reviews keep getting deleted. Sarah has been stalked, harassed, and threatened in order to silence her, and this place needs to be shut down. This is the mother's TikTok and Instagram. I actually found her on TikTok, and I've just been so invested in the story, and I just want to help in any way I can. So make sure to follow her and, sign the petition that she has on her bio.
All the teachers that you have are being paid illegally and have a legal authority over the Constitution of the United States under the First Amendment. This is genocide in America.
This is Jared Lee Loeffner, a man who used to post to YouTube regularly, and in 2011, he murdered 6 people in cold blood and wounded 13. This was a crime that shocked America. I remember when this happened, so let's take a look at it. So Jared was born in Tucson, Arizona, and that's where he would eventually commit this atrocious crime. Now, while Jared used to be a normal kid, people started to notice a massive personality change in him after high school. He was fired from a job at Quiznos because of this massive personality change. That's what the manager actually said. And while Jared was volunteering at an animal shelter, he kept walking the dogs through areas where the people who were running the place told him not to walk them. They eventually had to tell him, please don't come back, we don't want you to volunteer here, because he just would not listen to instructions. So Jared ended up going to college, but he was terminated from college after a series of incidents. First of all, during this time in his life, he went through a massive substance abuse issue. And then students and faculty members started reporting Jared to campus police, citing his erratic behavior in class. In one instance, he was removed from class for making fun of a girl who told the class that she had had an abortion. Eventually, the college suspended Jared, sent a letter to his parents, and he withdrew from college in his own free will. But there were a lot of people that were there in college at the time that stated that they felt that he might commit an act of violence in the future. And yet, once he was released from college, nobody ever did anything. No one checked up on him. And that's when these disturbing posts started to show up on Jared's social media. Now, I'm covering up a weapon that he posted on one of his pages. But he began ranting on YouTube, posting all sorts of bizarre, angry videos, and people who knew him claimed that he was just very anti-religion, anti-government, and that every single day he was growing more and more erratic, and they feared that he would do something, and yet still nobody stopped him. So on January 7th, 2011, Jared left a message on his friend's voicemail box. He basically said to his friend, "We had some good times, goodbye, see you later." On January 8th, 2011, U.S. Representative Gabby Giffords was actually having a constituents meeting outside of a supermarket in Tucson. She was basically meeting with members of the public, shaking hands, taking photos, announcing some stuff. And for some reason, Jared chose to target Gabby. So while Gabby Giffords was at this table outside of a Safeway supermarket meeting with people, Jared approached the table, pulled out a handgun, and shot Gabby directly in the head. So as Gabby was holding this little meeting outside of a Safeway supermarket, she was meeting with people. There was around 20 to 30 people there. Jared approached her, pulled out a handgun, and shot her directly in the head. He then opened fire on the crowd and ended up wounding 13 people and murdering 6. The victims included a 9-year-old girl and a U.S. District Court judge. Now, in the midst of the chaos, a 74-year-old Army veteran tackled Jared to the ground, and that ended the massacre. But in his wake, Jared left only blood and violence. Now, miraculously, Gabby Giffords actually survived the shooting. She had been shot directly in the head, but she made a miraculous recovery. And even though she retired from her position in the House of Representatives after all this happened to focus on her recovery, she's been a major figure that speaks out against gun violence. And obviously, at the end of the day, Jared was sentenced to life, many life sentences in prison, and he'll never see the light of day outside of those walls again.
Imagine being wrongfully convicted of killing your wife and children not once but twice. David Cam lived with his wife Kim and their 2 children in Georgetown, Indiana. By all accounts, his marriage was a happy one. David worked as a state trooper for 10 years and was a good father to 7-year-old Bradley and 5-year-old Jill. David left his house on the 28th of September 2000. It was around 7 p.m. and he went to play basketball at a local church. When he returned, he found a hideous scene. His wife and 2 children were shot dead in the garage. At 9:30, he called his former police post to alert them to what happened. Many would say that this was suspicious because he didn't just call 911. David argued that he needed help and they were his people. 35-year-old Kim had been shot in the head. She was found on the floor in her underwear. Her shoes and socks were on the roof of the car. Now, remember this detail because it is going to be important later on in the case. Tragically, little Bradley was on the back seat of the car and he'd seemingly tried to escape. He had been shot in the chest. Like many parents would, David said that he instinctively grabbed little Bradley out of the car and tried to resuscitate him. In doing so, he accidentally contaminated the crime scene. When police arrived, they found David understandably distraught. They noticed spots of blood on his shirt and they decided that this meant that he'd committed the crime. Shortly after, he was arrested and charged with his family's murders. Now, during his first trial, many women came forward to state that David had either engaged in an affair with them or propositioned them. Prosecutors argued that this meant that he had a motive to kill his family. However, the 11 basketball players that David was playing with that night in question said that he had not left the gym. They also hadn't noticed him behaving in a way out of the ordinary. Despite having this alibi, he was actually found guilty and sentenced to 195 years in prison. David managed to appeal this later on and won. The state Supreme Court overruled the decision based upon lack of evidence. However, the story does not end there. In a shocking twist, he was once again wrongfully convicted. In 2000, a sweatshirt containing DNA of an unknown male was found at the crime scene. But prior to David's first trial, this was never tested. It was finally tested in 2005. It matched convicted criminal Charles Boney. Now, he was actually known as the Shoe Bandit. He was known to have a thing for feet and would attack women and steal their shoes. There was also one of Charles's handprints on the car which placed him directly at the crime scene. Charles was tried and given 225 years in prison for the murders. However, David had a second trial which overlapped with Charles's. Charles claimed that David was the one who shot his family. David obviously still denied having anything to do with it. The prosecution argued that the blood on David's shirt was from being by her when she was killed. However, the defense argued that it could have been from brushing past her when he found his family. Once again, David was convicted and given life in prison. Thankfully, in 2009, this was again overturned. David was ordered to have a third trial. This time, Charles was brought in to testify. He claimed that David had lured him to the house to sell him the weapon, and then it was David who pulled the trigger. Charles claimed that in a panic he tripped over Kim's shoes and put them on the roof of the car. He said that he leaned on the car to check on the children. He said that explained why his handprint was there. However, when questioned, Charles denied touching any of the victims. He was proved to have lied about this by DNA being found on Jill's top, Kim's top, underwear, feet, and fingernails. In 2013, David was finally found not guilty on all charges.
When no one answers the door, officers kick it down and are immediately overwhelmed by the stench of death. It's the decomposing body of a naked man, and next to him is a tripod with a camera on it. And inside the camera is a tape, and scribbled on the side are the 3 words, "The last day." A deputy then sticks it inside a video player and presses play.
My name is Ricardo Lopez. Yesterday I purchased this camera. Do you want to see something funny? I'm gonna show you who I am. I am a monster.
This vlog is just one of 11 videotapes, along with a series of handwritten journals, that document Ricardo's descent into insanity. And soon enough, authorities will be racing against the clock to prevent his evil plan from claiming the life of a famous singer. This is how Ricardo Lopez became the Bjork Stalker. Ricardo was born on January 14th, 1975, into a middle-class family living in Uruguay. He's the youngest of 3 boys, and the family moves to the US and settles down in Lawrenceville, Georgia. And growing up, he's a pretty easygoing kid, but he's kind of shy and introverted, so it's tough for him to make friends at school. His inferiority complex leads him to dropping out of high school when he's just 17 and moving to South Florida to work with his older brother in the pest control business. And when he's not working, trying to make ends meet, He's home alone in his Hollywood apartment. And there he finds that the only way he can escape his bleak, boring life is through celebrity magazines. In 1993, after seeing a music video of an emerging artist named Bjork, he's in awe by the girl's childlike appearance and innocence and instantly becomes obsessed. But instead of art, Ricardo channels his creative energy into a diary about Bjork, which eventually becomes over 800 pages long. It's January 14th, 1996, and Ricardo's reading an article in Entertainment Weekly about the singer's new boyfriend. He's also a musician and fellow entertainer who goes by the nickname Goldie. This relationship, along with the fact that the guy is African American, turns Ricardo's deep affection for Bjork into an intense hatred.
Look at this beautiful face. She's fucking That's unacceptable.
See, in Ricardo's head, he thinks that Bjork is betraying him and wants to teach her a lesson. He starts conjuring up different methods of revenge and makes a plan so he can attack her from a distance and not be the one held responsible. He then has an idea for a sort of book bomb that when she opens it up, the contents will explode on her face, disfiguring or better yet, killing her. He then documents every diabolical step, turning this nightmare of a plan into reality. But he doesn't plan on just killing Bjork. See, a crucial part to all of this is Ricardo taking his own life. On September 12th, 1996, Ricardo is sitting in front of his video camera in his Hollywood apartment. He explains that he has just mailed a package to Bjork at her home in London. Ricardo then arms himself with a weapon and sits as the song I Remember You by Bjork plays in the background. Then, as it gets toward the last part of the song, Ricardo makes one last declaration.
This death is for you, Bjork.
At 2:53 p.m., I Remember You comes to an end, and Ricardo puts a 38 in his mouth, takes one last deep breath, and pulls the trigger. It's 4 days later, on September 16th, 1996, when investigators from the Broward County Sheriff's Department stumble into a crime scene unlike any other. Officers then become alarmed as the contents reveal an explosive device had been created in this very apartment. Though after several hours, they learn the device had been mailed out 4 days earlier to Bjork in London, the last day Ricardo had been seen alive. They immediately contact the Metropolitan Police in the United Kingdom, and amazingly, the package is located and removed from a post office in South London. Reporters all over the globe swarm the artist as she's trying to leave her house.
Well, it's just kind of a very sad thing, obviously when somebody shoots their face off, it's terrible.
You know, guys, in a sick way, he kind of got what he wanted. She knows his name. He hadn't been able to cope with his intense feelings of not being good enough, and an obsession led him down a destructive, fatal path. With social media, influencers and celebrities are more accessible to their fans than ever before. They post their home life, vacation, friends, family members, all of which puts their safety at risk. Rapper PNB Rock was recently shot a few miles away from me after posting on Instagram and tagging the restaurant he was at. Kim Kardashian was bound and gagged after posting on Instagram in Paris. Seriously, guys, be careful where you post in real time. I know I do, because if I die, who's gonna make the video about it?
What? Look in there, mate. Look in there. What? Look in there.
How in the world can an iPhone app lead you to discovering a dead body? I'm sure all of you guys know what randonauting is at this point, but if you guys don't know, it's the world's first quantumly generated choose-your-own-adventure game. Essentially, the app uses a quantum number generator to give the user a random set of coordinates. You set your intention, which can be whatever, a color, something spooky, something cool, and then you pick if you want an attractor, a void, or an anomaly. Anomalies end up being the typical choice because they're the strongest out of the two, And then you are given your locations. The creators believe that it's more than just being this simple though. Setting your intentions actually gathers the coordinates. So it's an app that uses manifestation. This app took off on TikTok with the beginning of COVID. It gave people something to do that was outside and away from others. But if you search this right in the TikTok bar, you'll see how many negative experiences people have had. Warning others not to do it. One even saying that you are dealing with quantum manipulation and unnaturally changing the future. So what does this mean and how did it help solve a murder? If you guys want to talk about the worst mom in the history of moms, let's talk about the case of Diane Downs, who literally attempted to murder all 3 of her children in order to get a man to fall in love with her. So what exactly creates a monster like this? Well, Diane was born August 7th of 1955 in Phoenix, Arizona. Most of her life, she was pretty well behaved, but she started to rebel against her parents around high school. She cut her hair, had a really edgy phase, and got super boy crazy. And she started to date guys, which was way outside of her strict family's rules. And she fell in love with a boy named Steve Downs. They were high school sweethearts, but the second that college hit, they ended up going separate ways. He joined the Navy, and she went to Pacific Coast Baptist Bible College. And while they said that they would stay faithful to each other, she immediately started to hook up with other guys when she got there, and was expelled for her promiscuous behavior, and had to go back and live with her strict parents. While Steve came back, he forgave her, and they ended up running away together and getting married on November 13th of 1973. They were known to fight constantly, but in 1974 they had their first child together, making everything worse.
Some are calling this the most horrific fraternity hazing ever in the United States. This is how one night at university can destroy your life forever. Danny Santulli was 18 years old and a freshman at the Uni of Missouri. In October 2021, Danny was captured on CCTV being blindfolded and led downstairs in an event named Pledge Dad Reveal Night. Danny was made to drink a litre of straight vodka by himself. At around 10:55, Danny collapsed and some of the frat members were seen carrying him to a sofa. Around midnight, Danny was captured on cameras sliding off the sofa, and shortly after he was found unconscious with blue lips. Shockingly, instead of calling an ambulance for Danny, the frat members piled him into a car, dropping him on the way. They drove him to hospital, but at this point he was already in cardiac arrest. Danny had to be resuscitated and spent the next 6 weeks in intensive care. Prior to this evening, Danny had been left needing stitches and crutches after he'd been forced to climb inside of a bin with broken glass inside. 2 nights before the night in question, Danny broke down in tears on the phone to his sister and told her about how stressed he felt about it all. His family had begged him to quit the pledge, but he didn't want to be ridiculed. This is Danny now. He will need full-time care for the rest of his life. He's now severely brain damaged, is blind, and cannot walk or talk. 2 former students are set to go to trial over this case.
The day after Sheila and Rachel ended Skylar's life, Rachel, the next morning, went to church camp. But what Sheila did is quite literally disgusting. The next day, Skylar's parents were freaking out. They had no idea where she was. And so her mom began to call Skylar's friends and family. And when Skylar's mom called Sheila, Sheila went over to Skylar's house, met with her mom and dad, sat on Skylar's bed, cried with her mother, wondering when Skylar was going to come home. So she ended her life the night prior, then was sitting on Skylar's bed, consoling her mom, telling her that everything was going to be okay and that Skylar would come home and that they would find her. And not only did she do that, but she literally tweeted, and I quote, "We really did go on 3." And that to me just shows how messed up of a person she is. And when Rachel came back from church camp, they continued to put up this whole facade of, oh my gosh, where's our best friend? What happened to her? Where is she? For about 5 months. These girls were full on in the fall when school started, went back to school. They were walking around high school like absolutely nothing. And granted, they were suspects and they were being interrogated throughout the school year. And there were rumors going around Morgantown that they did it, but nothing was ever solidified. But in December of 2012, Rachel had an insane mental breakdown. Then a week later, she called her lawyers and she said, I need to tell you something. And that's when she told the cops that they did it.